Two rooms, same daylight, same layout. One feels like a retreat, quiet, alive, almost magnetic. The other, it looks polished, stylish even, but somehow the air feels stuck. You walk into the first and your shoulders drop. There's something calming in the way the leaves catch the light. In the second, your mind can't settle. You don't know why, but you're ready to leave before you've even sat down. It's not the furniture, it's not the scent, it's not even the people. It's the plants, or more specifically, the energy they carry. Most people never think of it this way, but your home's plants are doing more than just filling space. They're either amplifying your financial flow or subtly blocking it. You see, in Feng Shui, every object you bring into your home participates in an ongoing, invisible dialogue. Your sofa speaks in comfort. Your lights speak in clarity. But your plants, they speak in energy movement, in upward or downward growth, in softness or sharpness, in nourishment or depletion. And when chosen with awareness, the right plants don't just beautify your space. They become quiet business partners. They help your ideas take root. They support emotional regulation when it's time to negotiate. They hold the frequency of growth, even on days you feel stalled. That's why in today's episode, we're diving into 5 specific plants that don't just look expensive. They energetically hold the vibration of wealth. But before we begin, let me be clear. This is not about superstition. I'm not going to tell you to stick a random coin in a pot and hope for a raise. This is about understanding which plant energies match which wealth stages, growth, clarity, sustainability, and how to align your environment and accordingly. Because the truth is, you can buy the same couch as a millionaire, hang the same art, even paint your walls the same trending beige. But if your plants are dusty, hostile, or energetically mismatched, your space will never breathe abundance. Your income may rise, but your clarity won't. Your savings might grow, but your decisions will wobble. You'll always feel slightly off, like things should be flowing faster, but something is slowing them down. And often that something is right in front of us, alive, growing, and deeply misunderstood. In this episode, I'll not only walk you through 5 plants that help you cultivate and stabilize wealth, but I'll also show you one mistake, one specific plant dynamic that even high net worth homeowners make. A mistake that might look harmless, but energetically speaks of loss, stagnation, and depletion. And here's the irony, it's often made by people who've already succeeded financially because they think their space is about status, not energy. We'll flip that idea upside down. Now, before we get into it, if content like this speaks to you, if you're the kind of person who's curious about how energy shapes not just your mood, but your money, then I invite you to support this channel. Like this video, share it with someone who's building their home as intentionally as they build their career, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. We're on our journey toward 2,000 thoughtful subscribers, and your click helps us continue bringing grounded Feng Shui insights to people who are ready to live with awareness, not anxiety. You won't find chanting bowls or smoke clouds here, just real-world energy work rooted in ancient logic, modern strategy, and a deep respect for how our surroundings shape our outcomes. All right, let's begin. The first plant I want to share with you is one I often recommend to business owners, creatives, and high-performance professionals. It's the kind of plant that doesn't just sit in the background. It participates. It adds heat when your motivation fades. It brings upward movement when you feel stuck in the middle. It's a plant that combines fire and wood, 2 powerful forces in the Feng Shui 5-element cycle. And it also happens to be a favorite in tropical modern homes designed by architects who understand that beauty means nothing if energy doesn't flow. Let's take a closer look. Plant 1, bird of paradise, energy magnet for high achievers. There's something unmistakable about the presence of a bird of paradise in a space. Even before its bold orange and blue blooms emerge, its wide, vertical leaves already signal a kind of upward ambition. Unlike fussy or trailing plants that require constant tending or fade into the background, this plant insists on being seen, not in a loud or intrusive way, but in a way that says, this space is moving forward. In classical Feng Shui terms, the bird of paradise embodies a unique blend of wood and fire elements. The wood is clear, the deep green, structured leaves that shoot upward like an unfolding vision. The fire is more symbolic, expressed through its bloom, its bold stature, and the radiant, sometimes theatrical shape of its petals. When these two elements combine in a plant, they activate a powerful form of yang qi, energy that rises, that initiates, that catalyzes transformation. This is the kind of energy needed by high achievers, those stepping into new chapters, launching businesses, shifting identities, or reclaiming agency after a stagnant season. When placed in the right part of the home, especially near the entrance, or a brightly lit corner where sunlight can activate its natural fire, the bird of paradise acts like a signal tower. It tells incoming energy, we are growing here. We are not stuck. We are not waiting. We are rising. It's especially useful for spaces where decision-making happens frequently. Home offices, meeting lounges, creative studios, or near the desk of someone who holds vision for a team or family. Psychologically, we are shaped by what surrounds them, and a plant like this becomes a daily visual cue to stand taller, think bolder, and move more intentionally. Unlike trailing vines or passive tabletop greens, the bird of paradise interacts with your posture, your mood, and your drive. From a metaphysical standpoint, this plant strengthens the energetic root, providing a sense of stability and anchoring in reality, while simultaneously stimulating the crown, the energetic center associated with clarity, purpose, and higher perspective. This dual action effect is rare. Most plants either ground or uplift. Few do both, but the bird of paradise, in its form and function, brings the message you can be stable and visionary at the same time. You don't have to wait for one before calling in the other. In modern design psychology, the plant is also associated with visual flow. Its tall, linear leaves act almost like chai conductors, helping direct energy upward and outward. Ideal for environments that need energy to move, projects to launch, or goals to be activated. However, placement is everything. When positioned in cluttered dark corners or crammed between furniture, the qi of the plant can become suppressed. And instead of supporting clarity, it may contribute to a sense of pressure or burnout. This is the plant equivalent of having an inspired idea but no space to act on it. That's why windowless rooms, storage-heavy home offices, or corners behind doors are not ideal for this plant's placement. It wants air, it wants space, it wants light. When these conditions are met, the bird of paradise will respond by extending taller, its leaves opening with more symmetry, and when it blooms, doing so with confidence. On the other hand, when neglected or energetically misplaced, it begins to curl, droop, or produce misaligned leaves. Literal signs that your environment is no longer supporting forward momentum. And these are signs that should be read, not ignored. From a behavioral perspective, keeping this plant thriving becomes a micro practice in managing your own ambition. Watering regularly but not excessively, ensuring proper drainage, rotating it toward the light, clearing away dead leaves, each act becomes a metaphor. You're tending not just to a plant, but to your relationship with upward movement. You're saying, I support my energy, I nourish what I want to grow. And in return, the plant mirrors this care with more vitality, more presence, and in some cases, more blooms. There's also an underappreciated aesthetic advantage. Unlike many decorative plants that fade into the periphery, the bird of paradise becomes a feature. And that matters. Because in energy psychology, what's seen often is what's absorbed most deeply. When the first thing your eyes meet as you walk into your home is a strong, upright plant reaching toward light, your subconscious absorbs that message. You're home and your home is in motion. For those who are constantly navigating high-pressure environments, executives, entrepreneurs, creatives, the bird of paradise offers more than beauty. It offers reinforcement. It's a visual ally, a structural reminder that expansion can happen in a way that's both powerful and graceful. And if you study the kinds of plants chosen by high-net-worth individuals, not from magazines, but from real-life consultations and lived-in estates, you'll often find this plant featured in outdoor lounges, near private studios, or flanking entranceways. Not because it's trending, but because energetically it holds space in a way few plants can. Its form is bold, but not aggressive. Its movement is strong, but not chaotic. It says, something meaningful is being built here. And that message, when reinforced daily through spatial alignment, becomes more than symbolism. It becomes reality. So if you're in a phase of your life where you're growing something, your career, your sense of self, your vision for what comes next, the bird of paradise is more than a decorative choice. It's a co-architect, and like any good partner, it responds to how it's treated. Give it light, and it will brighten your path. Give it space, and it will support your rise. But ignore it, tuck it away, or let it curl into a forgotten corner, and it will show you through its decline that your momentum is being silenced. Not from outside forces, but from within your own walls. And that, for those who understand the language of Qi, is a message worth listening to. Plant 2, rubber plant, stability for builders and savers. If the bird of paradise is the loud and elegant visionary of the plant world, then the rubber plant is its quiet strategist, a symbol of steady, long-term wealth grounded in patience and discipline. With its thick, rounded, dark green leaves that shine like polished stone when cared for, the rubber plant doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't bloom extravagantly or twist dramatically. It holds its shape. It deepens its color. It quietly absorbs light, purifies the air, and roots your space into a stable energetic frequency. And in the language of Feng Shui, this energy is precious. The rubber plant belongs to the earth element, but its structure leans gently into the metal realm, where intention, focus, and decision-making reside. This makes it a rare energetic bridge, a plant that grounds while sharpening. It doesn't stimulate like fire-based plants. It doesn't flow like water-oriented ones. It anchors you, it regulates you, it centers you in financial clarity. For people who tend to overspend, impulse shop, or swing between feast and famine cycles, this plant becomes a daily counterbalance. It reflects consistency. It says, choose the slow path. It says, trust the rhythm of patience over the thrill of urgency. And perhaps that's why so many homes designed for true longevity, not just appearance, often include a healthy, thriving rubber plant in communal spaces. Because its presence shifts the emotional tone of a room. You may not notice it at first glance, but you feel it. In a living room, it helps conversations feel calmer, less reactive. In a reading corner, it invites you to linger, absorb, and reflect instead of rushing toward the next task. In financial zones of the home, where bills are paid or plans are made, it reminds you to invest thoughtfully, not chase the next high. Its waxy, rounded leaves are particularly symbolic. In Feng Shui, roundness softens conflict and promotes unity. The leaf texture itself holds qi longer, like a sponge for ambient energy. That means this plant doesn't just fill visual space, it metabolizes emotional residue. A room with a well-tended rubber plant is often described as feeling more whole, even if no one can pinpoint why. But this effect only holds when the plan is honored. And that's where many people go wrong. A neglected rubber plant, one left with dust-covered leaves, dried soil, or limp posture, does not simply stop working. It begins to absorb and amplify the very energy you're trying to avoid. In energetic terms, it becomes a mirror of stuckness. It symbolizes blocked flow, ignored instincts, and decisions left unmade. You might feel it as low motivation, as passive avoidance of financial realities, or as vague emotional tension during conversations that should be straightforward. This is why upkeep is not optional. Cleaning the leaves weekly, rotating it gently for balanced light exposure, and keeping its base clutter-free are not just aesthetic tasks. They are rituals of alignment. They are ways of saying, I care for my financial energy. I respect my process. I move slowly, but I do not stop. One small but powerful tip is to place the rubber plant in a white or silver-toned pot. In Feng Shui, this pairing activates metal-earth synergy. Metal governs clarity, judgment, and precision, especially in financial and legal matters. Earth provides the foundation. Together, they support the kind of wealth that is not won, but grown. Legacy wealth, saved money, durable decisions. This combination is especially effective in homes where financial discussions take place, such as near the dining table, the living room sofa, or even beside a home office chair. And when we think about real-world examples of this energy in action, Warren Buffett comes immediately to mind. Known globally for his unwavering belief in long-term value, Buffett's philosophy has never been about quick wins or trend chasing. He famously still lives in the modest home he bought in 1958 and is open about avoiding over-decoration or excessive possessions. But what he does maintain is natural light, simplicity, and according to those close to him, a preference for spaces that feel grounded. A plant like the rubber plant fits this energy field perfectly. It doesn't perform, it holds space. It lasts. It reminds us that wealth is not about rapid accumulation, but about daily behavior, about honoring time-tested principles, about nurturing the slow burn, and about trusting that what grows with care stays with care. In homes where clients are building new financial foundations, paying off debt, stabilizing income, starting a savings habit, the rubber plant is often one of the first I recommend. It doesn't require excessive sun or constant watering. It doesn't demand attention. It simply teaches consistency through presence. It becomes a subtle tutor, helping to recalibrate the nervous system, especially for those recovering from financial trauma or scarcity. It says, breathe, breathe, invest in your own steadiness. Stop chasing the next fix. Even the way it grows gradually, with sturdy, upright stems and thickening trunks, mirrors the emotional scaffolding needed for mature financial decisions. And because its energetic field is more stabilizing than stimulating, it works particularly well in households where money is often an emotional trigger. It slows things down. It anchors. To maximize its effect, avoid surrounding the rubber plant with too many other objects. Don't turn it into a decorative cluster. Let it stand alone or beside simple furnishings. Give it space to breathe. Give yourself the symbolism. And when possible, check its leaves. Not just for dust or pests, but for reflection. Is the plant stretching toward light, or has it stopped growing altogether? That's your mirror. That's your message. In energy work, we're never guessing. We're observing. And plants, especially those as emotionally intelligent as the rubber plant, are always showing us where the flow is steady or where we've begun to drift. Plant 3, ZZ plant, for consistent income, and low effort. In a world where many people feel as though their income arrives in waves, one moment abundant, the next uncertain, there is something incredibly reassuring about the quiet, unwavering presence of a ZZ plant. It's not a flashy plant, it doesn't flower, it doesn't demand. But what it does consistently, subtly, and effectively is hold an energetic posture of calm, stable financial chai. Its glossy, oval-shaped leaves resemble small coins, which is one of the reasons it's so often recommended in energy-based wealth traditions. But the deeper value of the ZZ plant doesn't lie in the visual symbolism of money. It lies in its energy rhythm. It grows slowly but with purpose. It stays upright through long periods of drought or neglect. It adapts to light and dark spaces alike. And yet, it never collapses into chaos. In many ways, this is exactly the energy most people need when building income in a modern, unstable financial landscape. Especially for those who freelance, work in commission-based jobs, or are navigating the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, the ZZ plant becomes more than decoration. It becomes an emotional anchor. Let's talk about structure. Each stalk of the ZZ plant rises vertically, holding firm and spaced apart, almost like green bamboo, but with a softness that feels more accessible. When observed closely, it's easy to see how its uprightness doesn't strain or reach. It simply grows when the conditions are right and rests when they are not. This is a form of energetic modeling. It tells the body and the subconscious, you don't need to push constantly. You need to be consistent. You need to respond to the environment, not fight it. And you need to trust that sustainability is not the absence of effort. It's the presence of rhythm. That's why I often recommend the ZZ plant for people who are doing real emotional labor around money. For those leaving jobs they've outgrown. For those stepping into a new financial identity. For those who have experienced burnout from trying to control outcomes. Because this plant does what many of us forget to do. It moves forward without panic. Placement plays a powerful role here. When positioned near a main doorway, the ZZ plant becomes an energetic greeter. It catches chi as it enters and says, this is a space of stability. This is a household that holds what comes in. When placed on a work desk, especially then on the left side, which Feng Shui often associates with financial flow, it supports clarity in planning, ease in invoicing, and balance in how work is received. It helps offset the silent panic that so many people feel about whether next month will match this one. And in doing so, it creates space for better decisions. The plant's very presence signals that it's possible to thrive quietly, that you don't need noise or speed to succeed. You need alignment, you need clarity, you need energy that supports you, not exhausts you. Now, like any energetic tool, the ZZ plant performs best when respected. It doesn't need much, some indirect light, occasional watering, and space to breathe. But when left in shadowy, stagnant corners, or when ignored completely, its energy dulls. And that dullness can translate into your environment. You might begin to feel numb about your goals. You might procrastinate on opportunities. You might settle into a form of energetic complacency. Not because life is hard, but because your space no longer reminds you of what you're capable of. That's why care matters. Not perfection, not rituals every morning, just basic respect. A gentle rotation toward the light every week. A wipe down of the leaves to keep them clear. A visual check-in. Are the stalks upright? Is new growth appearing? Is the pot well-proportioned, clean, and stable? These small acts say, I'm still engaged, I'm still participating in my own flow. Symbolic activation can help reinforce intention. One of the simplest ways to do this is by tying a thin red thread around the base of the plant's pot. In Chinese tradition, red symbolizes life force, motivation, and protection. By pairing the ZZ's calm frequency with red's dynamic push, you create a loop of balanced chi, one that encourages steady financial action without veering into urgency. Another method is to place a small coin beneath the pot, one that has personal meaning. It doesn't need to be ancient or foreign. Even a dime you receive during a difficult transition can carry charge. The key is not superstition, but symbolism. That coin becomes a reminder. I've earned before. I will again. This flow is not random, it's remembered. There's also a subtle emotional benefit to interacting with this plant. Because of its form and feel, it naturally invites touch. Not in a way that distracts, but in a way that reconnects. A quick brush of your fingers along its smooth leaves during a break. A gentle lean in to examine a new stalk forming. These small moments pull you out of cognitive overload and into embodied awareness. They're grounding, and when done consistently, they act like tiny rituals of financial presence. You're not just thinking about money, you're in relationship with it. You're tending to the energy that holds your money-making space. And that makes a difference, psychologically, practically, energetically. For viewers who live in spaces with low natural light or limited plant success, the ZZ is often the breakthrough. It thrives where others struggle, and that too is part of its wealth coding. It's the plant of slow miracles, of growth in the margins, of opportunity that doesn't scream for attention, but finds you quietly when your readiness aligns. I've seen clients keep a ZZ on their desk for years, never blooming, never changing much, and then one month a single new stalk rises, brighter and longer than the rest. And without fail, that same month, something shifts. A new client arrives, an investment pays off, a contract that was stalled finally signs. Coincidence? Maybe. But in Feng Shui, we know better. Energy organizes itself before events do, and the ZZ plant, when honored, helps organize your energy toward receptivity. Plant 4 Orchid, for high vibration networking and presence. There are very few plants that command presence without making a sound, that speak without color, volume, and that shift the energy of a room not through movement, but through stillness. The orchid is one of them. In Feng Shui, it is classified as a carrier of refined Qi, an energy that neither aggressively expands nor defensively contracts. Instead, it floats. It hovers in the atmosphere like a soft frequency of elegance. This is the kind of energy that doesn't hustle for attention, but holds it effortlessly. And in environments where influence is built through connection, clarity, or charisma, not force, the orchid becomes a powerful ally. Unlike fire-driven plants that bring stimulation or wood-heavy varieties that charge forward with growth, the orchid operates differently. It introduces grace, not in the decorative sense, but in the vibrational sense. It refines the atmosphere. It calms the nervous system. It allows conversations to breathe. It carries the essence of presence, the kind of quiet power that doesn't need to lead every discussion, but somehow anchors it nonetheless. That's why orchids are especially recommended in rooms where people gather to make decisions, share stories, or hold space for transformation. A consultation room, a guest bedroom, a coaching office, or even a Zoom backdrop used for high-level meetings. All of these are ideal environments for this plant. It doesn't need to be large. It doesn't need to be in bloom year-round, but it does need to be intentional, because an orchid that is placed for looks alone, without awareness of its energetic role, can easily wilt in both form and function. What makes the orchid so unique isn't just its shape or rarity, it's the aura it brings. In rooms where emotions often fluctuate, where tension, uncertainty, or ambition quietly ride the edges of every conversation, the orchid introduces softness without fragility. It speaks to possibility without demanding answers. In this way, it serves not just the visual palette of a space, but the emotional intelligence of that space. It helps those who are present feel seen, feel heard, and more importantly, feel relaxed enough to be themselves. This is the silent language of refined Qi, and when used with care, it can support breakthroughs, both interpersonal and internal. Now, it's important to understand that the orchid's energy is not one of maintenance-free decor. It asks for relationship. A thriving orchid is a reflection of mutual respect. It thrives in environments where the air is neither too dry nor too chaotic, where the lighting is soft, consistent, and diffused, where its pot isn't forgotten in a corner behind a stack of papers or overwhelmed by busy visuals. It thrives where elegance is allowed to exist without needing to perform. And when this plant is blooming, when its flowers extend in quiet sculptural arcs, it doesn't just elevate the aesthetic of a room, it shifts how people speak, how they sit, how they listen. The conversation slows slightly, the mind opens gently, and in that opening, clarity often arrives. But here's where things become delicate. An orchid with wilting blooms is not a neutral object. In energetic terms, it becomes a warning signal. It represents declining social energy, emotional depletion, or overstayed cycles. A wilted orchid on display communicates stagnation, especially in relationships, collaborations, or personal presence. It tells the room, often subconsciously, something has been held on to too long. Something beautiful has been ignored, and now its energy is closing. That's why rotating orchids seasonally, or when their bloom fades, is so crucial. It's not about keeping appearances. It's about honoring cycles. Just as we don't wear summer clothes in winter, we don't display flowers that have completed their function. In some traditions, it is said that a blooming orchid enters your space with a message, and when that message has been received, it leaves. To keep the vessel after its purpose is complete is to invite energetic confusion. So the rule is simple. If the bloom is active and strong, allow it to hold space. When it declines, thank it, return it to nature if appropriate, and prepare the room for a new energetic companion. The placement of an orchid also reflects the kind of energy you're calling in. For instance, placing one behind you on camera, say in a Zoom frame, signals composed leadership. It frames your presence with elegance. It tells others, even unconsciously, that you operate from clarity, not chaos. That you make space for grace, not only in your design choices, but in how you think. Similarly, placing it in a guest room conveys respect. It says, you are welcomed here not as an obligation, but as a valued participant in this home's flow. You are not being hosted, you are being honored. And that difference is felt, subtle, but deeply felt. Consider now the metaphor of presence over pressure. In modern life, we are conditioned to equate success with noise. The louder the voice, the more we assume it must be right. The bigger the performance, the more we assume it must be worthy. But the orchid, and those who resonate with its frequency, teach us something else entirely. They show us that true impact requires no volume. That influence is not about being the center of the room, but about holding space that centers others. People like Michelle Obama exemplify this principle. Her presence is unmistakable. Her voice is clear, steady, powerful, but never performative. She doesn't dominate rooms. She elevates them. And in that way, she embodies orchid energy, quiet radiance, grounded elegance, a power that speaks without shouting. So when you bring an orchid into your space, ask yourself, what kind of presence am I cultivating here? Am I filling this space for aesthetics? Or am I partnering with the plant to anchor energy I want to carry? Am I placing it where connection happens, where stories unfold, where healing begins? Or am I hiding it in a corner to check a design box? These questions matter because the orchid listens, it responds to respect. And when honored, it does more than bloom. It balances, it softens, it attracts, not through luck, not through charm, but through energetic coherence, through alignment. Now, if you ever feel your orchid is no longer matching the room's frequency, consider moving it, refreshing the soil, or even giving it away if its role has ended. The goal isn't to keep things forever. The goal is to remain in flow, to allow beauty to arrive, stay, and evolve, as all refined energy does. Plant 5, Monstera, the symbol of sustainable growth. There is something unmistakably ancient in the presence of a mature Monstera. Its broad, fenestrated leaves unfold like nature's own blueprint for growth. Not fast, not flashy, but intelligent, stable, and deeply efficient. In Feng Shui, Monstera is often overlooked in favor of more ornamental plants, with flowers or dramatic upward movement. But for those who understand subtle energy flow, Monstera represents one of the most powerful symbols of sustainable wealth. Its leaves split not because of disease or damage, but because of strategy. This plant literally evolves to allow wind and water to pass through without resistance, making it one of the most resilient in nature. That alone tells you everything about the kind of financial energy it supports. This is not a plant for chasing income highs or launching chaotic ventures. It's a plant for those who are building something that lasts, something measured, something deliberate. And think of it as a visual mantra for long-term growth, for compound interest, for portfolio building, for those silent Sundays spent mapping out your 5-year plan instead of scrolling. The Monstera holds the frequency of those who don't need applause today because they're designing success for tomorrow. Its energy is primarily earth-wood blended, meaning it grounds first, then grows. And that makes it incredibly effective for people who are prone to impulsivity in money matters, for those who jump into ideas without vetting them, for those who fear missing out and end up spending energy chasing trends instead of nurturing one meaningful track. Monstera helps stabilize that pattern, not through punishment, but through presence. Its large, sweeping leaves literally slow your eyes down. Its rooted, low posture tells your nervous system, you don't need to rush to rise. You just need to continue. Watered but not drowned. Exposed to light but not scorched. Its needs are moderate, but its return is massive. In homes where people are saving for retirement, building passive income channels, or investing in long-term real estate strategies, I always recommend at least one healthy Monstera, ideally placed near transitional zones, hallways where energy moves quickly, entryways where decisions happen, or junction points where family members intersect. These are areas of constant, subtle movement, and a plant like Monstera, with its architectural steadiness, brings coherence to the flow. It smooths what is abrupt. It regulates what is chaotic. And in doing so, it trains your inner world to mirror that rhythm. There's also something to be said about its adaptability. Monstera tolerates lower light. It thrives even when the conditions are imperfect. That alone is a metaphor for the kind of wealth most people actually live with. Not the idealized dream, not the glamorous version you see on screen, but the slow, sometimes dim, sometimes messy progress of building a stable financial base, month by month, decision by decision. Monstera grows without drama, and so should your wealth. That's its lesson. That's its offering. And here's something subtle but powerful. When paired with a heavy, earthy base, stone, clay, or ceramic, its impact doubles. The earth-wood synergy becomes a full loop. The pot stabilizes the roots hold the plant, and the plant expands with intelligence. When you anchor this energy near the door of your home, you're telling the universe, this house holds steady value. This house welcomes clarity. And most importantly, this house is not afraid to grow slowly. That energetic posture matters, because fast money comes and goes, but steady energy attracts steady gain. This is how Monstera teaches, not with speed, but with structure. One of my favorite examples of this is a real estate client I once worked with. She had started with almost nothing. One rental property in a remote suburb and a part-time job on the side. But she chose to build patiently. No sudden flips, no risky leverage, just well-researched, stable growth. Each year, one new asset. Each quarter, a cash flow review. No skipping steps. In her home office at the corner of her desk was a Monstera she'd had since the beginning. When I visited her 5 years later, the plant had grown from a single shoot to a wide sculptural presence that anchored the entire room. When I pointed it out, she smiled. "It's my favorite colleague," and she said, "It's outlived most of my assumptions, and it never panics when the market dips." That's the kind of relationship this plant fosters. It becomes part of the architecture of your discipline, not by being demanding, but by being consistent. And it teaches you to pay attention. When a Monstera starts drooping, yellowing, or leaning too far to one side, it's not just a horticultural issue, it's an energetic signal. It might be telling you your foundations are shaky, that a financial boundary has been breached, that you're overextending in areas that require restraint. Listen, adjust, recenter. That's the work, not mystical, just mindful, grounded, practical, and very real. Another note worth mentioning is that Monstera has a spatial generosity to it. Unlike compact or vertical plants, it expands laterally. Its leaves stretch outward, occupying the space in a way that says, "I belong here." That energy is incredibly beneficial for people, especially women or underrepresented professionals, who have been conditioned to shrink in power dynamics. A thriving Monstera helps recalibrate that internal posture. It reminds you to take up space, to own your goals, to not apologize for the bigness of your vision, and to do it all with quiet, rooted elegance. So the next time you walk past a Monstera in someone's home or office, look deeper. It's not just a trend from Instagram. It's a plant that's holding a very old, very intelligent form of energetic wealth. And when you choose to bring it into your own space, you're not just decorating, you're aligning with structure, with stability, with sustainable growth, which in the end is the only kind of wealth that doesn't just look good, but feels good to live inside. Plants that drain your wealth energy. While most people focus their attention on what to bring into a space to attract wealth, far fewer pause to consider what might already be in their home, quietly pushing that abundance away. In the practice of Feng Shui, as well as in energy design traditions around the world, it's well understood that not every living thing enhances flow. Some plants are neutral, some are amplifiers, but others, due to their shape, their emotional resonance, or their neglected condition, can act as energetic saboteurs. They don't do this maliciously. There is no plant that is inherently bad, but each plant communicates. Each one emits a form of symbolic posture that mirrors how energy behaves in your environment. And if the posture is one of tension, case, or decay, then so too becomes the flow of money, clarity, and daily ease in your space. To maintain wealth energy, we must be as intentional with what we remove as we are with what we add. Let's begin with the most commonly misunderstood offender, the cactus. Loved by minimalists for its resilience and design elegance, the cactus is a plant of survival, not of prosperity. Its energy is sharp, self-contained, and guarded. In outdoor desert landscapes, this serves a powerful function. It protects territory, holds water, and endures harsh conditions. But when brought indoors, especially into communal or financial spaces like living rooms, offices, or negotiation zones, the cactus sends a different message. It says, "I don't trust softness. I don't need community. I survive alone." Its needles may be small, but symbolically they represent barriers. And over time, their presence can subtly influence interpersonal dynamics, leading to tension, defensiveness, or an unspoken sense of isolation. In energetic terms, cactus chi doesn't circulate well. It hovers in the air like static. It creates a sensation of alertness, not ease. And when placed near entryways or desks, it can actually repel opportunities, much like it repels predators in the wild. There are exceptions. A small cactus in a sunlit bathroom or a well-balanced terrarium with other elements can be neutralized. But in most interior settings, especially where money is discussed or received, it's better to choose a plant that invites rather than deflects, a plant that opens rather than guards. The cactus is not an enemy, but it is a warrior. And wealth, as we know, rarely arrives through war. Next, we come to the untamed vine. At first glance, vines seem gentle. Their soft, flowing lines suggest movement, life, and connection. But like any energy pattern, when uncontained, they can spiral into confusion. In Feng Shui, vines are classified as trailing qi. They don't anchor, they don't hold, they meander. And when allowed to sprawl across bookcases, curtain rods, or cabinet tops without intention, they create visual and energetic clutter. The subconscious reads these tangled shapes as indecision, as incomplete thoughts, as tasks left undone. And that has consequences. In homes where overgrown vines dominate, it's not uncommon to see patterns of procrastination, cluttered finances, or emotional overwhelm. The brain mirrors what the eye sees. If your plan is confused, your thoughts often are too. This doesn't mean you must avoid vines entirely. In fact, when trained upward on trellises or neatly pruned in wall-mounted planters, vines can represent upward ambition and creative renewal. But if they spill over onto floors, beds, or filing cabinets like unchecked river currents, their energy shifts. Instead of guiding growth, they flood it. Instead of inspiring order, they dissolve it. So ask yourself, is this vine telling a story of direction or of drift? Then there's the dead or dusty plant. This one is less symbolic and more direct. A plant that has died or is visibly suffering does not just signal neglect. It becomes a vessel for stagnant qi. It holds the frequency of abandonment, disappointment, and halted progress. Even if you no longer notice it in the corner, your subconscious does. It registers every brown edge, every drooping stem, every dry crack in the soil. It sees these not as isolated failures, but as emotional cues. This space tolerates decay. This environment doesn't follow through. Worse yet, when these plants are placed in dark or humid corners, bathrooms, unused rooms, basements, they become energetic black holes. They absorb what should move. They trap what should transform. In terms of financial flow, they symbolize investments gone silent, intentions that never matured, or support systems that once held but now crumble. If you're keeping a dead plant in your space out of guilt or nostalgia, you're choosing emotional weight over energetic freedom. And that's not a wise exchange. The solution is not to shame yourself, it's to release with respect. Thank the plant for the energy it gave, return it to the earth, clear the container, and make space for something new to grow. Another subtle but powerful blocker comes in the form of oversized plants, particularly those that tower over the tallest member of the household. In ancient spatial analysis, hierarchy mattered. The human body was always meant to be the central point of scale within a home. When a plant, especially one with upward dominance, overwhelms that balance, it shifts the psychology of the space. It can create a quiet sense of being overpowered, of being watched, of being dwarfed. And in professional or financial zones of the house, this imbalance can cloud ambition. It subtly tells the body, you are not the authority here. It causes the homeowner to unconsciously contract, to shrink emotionally or energetically. This isn't about avoiding tall plants entirely. A well-placed tree in a double-height room can feel majestic and supportive. But when tall plants are crammed into small offices or bedrooms with low ceilings, they don't elevate, they dominate. And domination in energy terms is the antithesis of partnership. Instead of working with your environment, you become subject to it. So measure not just the height of your plant, but the story it tells. Is it uplifting or is it overshadowing? When these plant patterns converge, say, a tall cactus in a dusty corner next to overgrown vines spilling across a forgotten shelf, the energetic outcome becomes compounded. It creates what we call scattered chi. A home with scattered chi doesn't feel like one problem. It feels like many small frictions. Missed bills, interrupted sleep, lost focus, disagreements over trivial matters, and most importantly, money that never seems to stay. Money that feels like it escapes through invisible holes. Feng Shui isn't magical, it's observational. And when you look at your plant choices through this lens, what you're really seeing is your relationship with attention, care, and respect for self, for space, for the life you're cultivating. That's why the first step to creating a home that holds wealth is not to buy a new lucky bamboo. It's to walk through your space and ask, what here no longer feels alive? What here makes me contract rather than expand? And which plant right now reflects who I used to be, but no longer wish to embody? Removing energy blocks doesn't mean removing beauty, it means refining it. It means choosing forms that support your current alignment, not past patterns. And when that happens, when you clear the cactus that's been silently absorbing tension, or prune the vines that have blurred your goals, or finally release the dusty ficus that never quite caught light in that corner, you will feel the shift, not as drama, but as lightness, as a new breath in your wallet, as a new rhythm in your schedule, as space for prosperity to land and for your nervous system to welcome it. Life lesson and reflection. Plants aren't decor, they're dialogue. Every plant in your space is speaking, whether you've stopped to listen or not. Some whisper encouragement, others echo fatigue, but none are truly silent. They respond to light, to neglect, to intention, and most of all, they respond to your energy. In Feng Shui and in the broader tradition of spatial energy design, plants are never just decoration. They're participation. They mirror the energy we bring home at the end of the day and the energy we silently carry into the world each morning. Their condition reflects our decisions, our avoidance, and our aspirations. When they thrive, it often means we're doing the same. And when they droop or decay or sit collecting dust in a forgotten corner, they quietly reflect the parts of our lives we've postponed. From a Buddhist lens, this isn't about superstition, it's about responsibility. The practice of right livelihood begins not with external gains, but with internal alignment. Are we aware of how we live, how we treat our surroundings? Do we cultivate space with respect, or do we take it for granted? A cluttered garden is never just about plants. It's a mirror of an overwhelmed mind. A wilting leaf may point to a neglected goal. A dusty pot might suggest a delayed decision. But a well-cared-for corner, a single thriving stem placed with presence, that's a form of ethical wealth. That's prosperity lived gently. You don't need to transform your entire space overnight, but you can begin with one small act of clarity. Tonight, I invite you to walk through your home slowly. Don't fix, don't force, just observe. Which plants are still aligned with where you're headed? Which ones feel heavy, draining, or forgotten? And which one, perhaps just one, might now be ready to be thanked, released, and replaced? Let that first act be your reset. Let that one shift mark the beginning of a more conscious dialogue with your space and with your own growth. If this video helps shift the way you see your home, I gently ask you to share it with someone who's quietly building something better for themselves. Leave a comment below. What plant are you saying goodbye to? What energy are you inviting in? And if you haven't already, I warmly welcome you to subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. With your support, we're nearing our milestone of 2,000 followers, and that helps us continue crafting thoughtful, grounded content rooted in time-tested wisdom.